All right, again, thank you all for joining us today. Let's dive right in. We're talking about setting expectations, and whether you're a people leader, a teammate, every one of us can benefit from knowing how to set expectations, knowing why we set expectations, because it really creates a culture of accountability. And I really like that because accountability creates trust, and trust goes a long way when we have a culture of trust. So that's where we set those expectations. We do it every day in our lives, and we should be doing that at work too with each other. So that way we know what to expect. Also, it reduces some confusion and it definitely creates clarity in what's expected of you and what you expect of others. Today, we are honored to have a distinguished panel of experts. They're going to share their insights with us, and I'm really excited for them to share this information because it's some good stuff. We have Kevin Workman here, our Personnel State Director with Department of Administrative Services. We have Barb McIntyre, who is the Human Resources Director over at the Department of Transportation. And Denise Ewing, who is an HR business partner at DHHS, will also be joining us. So on behalf of the training team and everyone who's here in attendance, thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to share your expertise with us today. All right, so I'd like you just to introduce yourself and then please provide your insights to us about setting expectations. Kevin, would you like to start?
Sure. Thank you, Tracy. Really privileged to be here today. I think we have somebody that's not muted.
Uh-oh.
Okay, I'll try again. Okay, there. I think we're good now. So welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. Hope you're having a great day. And I am Kevin Workman. I've been with the state coming up on 3.5 years, and I currently serve in the role as State Personnel Director, serving the state personnel team in the Department of Administrative Services. And I'm glad to join with Barb and Denise today as we get to share some of our thoughts and insights about setting expectations. I think each of us will probably take a little different tack and perspective. I'm going to be speaking more from a people leader standpoint. Barb is going to be speaking more from a teammate standpoint, and Denise will kind of round us out with her thoughts as well. So I'm going to jump right into it. And Tracy, if you can share the slide deck.
Sure, here we go. Are you seeing the notes one or the regular one?
It's the presenter view. It's the one that has for the notes and everything.
Okay.
Gotcha. Thank you. I'll switch them here.
All righty, very good. So while Tracy's doing that, I just want to begin by making this statement that setting expectations is most effective when it's done in partnership, teammate and people leader. So we're all going to kind of touch on that through presenting our differing perspectives here, but that's going to be a theme for all of us, that setting expectations is not done in a vacuum. It's best done and most effective when it's done as a partnership. Next slide, please. So there's a study, and I was trying to find the source for it. I'd come across it a number of years ago, and I couldn't find the source, but essentially, I'd like you just to read and digest this slide a little bit, especially if you're a people leader. And those of us who are teammates and have been teammates, we understand this. So leaders who treat teammates as subordinates reduce teammate engagement and discretionary effort by 50%. Just let that sink in a little bit. How we treat people on our team has a profound effect on how engaged teammates are and what they're willing to do in discretionary effort. On the flip side, leaders who treat teammates as partners double teammate engagement and discretionary effort. So this obviously has very, very high impact on relationships between people leaders and teammates, but also it has a profound effect on the business bottom line. If we're here to work together and align our team to accomplish results and to serve our citizens, in state government and do that in the best way possible with all of our tax dollars, then you can see by doubling engagement and discretionary effort by treating our teammates as partners has an incredible effect that sometimes we don't realize. Next slide, please. So I'm going to tease you a little bit. I'm going to use the rest of my time to introduce you to the Situational Leadership 2 model. It's a product of Ken Blanchard. Some of you may be familiar with it. I find it extremely helpful, and I'm just going to tease you with a quick overview of it, and you can Google this yourself. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be glad to dialogue with you about this. But from the perspective I'm taking today, the foundation for successfully setting expectations begins by diagnosing a teammate's development level for a specific task. And I'll just pause there for a second. We're talking about a task or an assignment or a project because a person's development level is not the same for everything. So when we talk about development level, we can't just use a blanket statement for a person to say Kevin's a D1 and a development level 1 and Tracy's a development level 4 and Brian's a 3 and Barb's a 2 because it varies based on our knowledge, skills, abilities, and previous experience. So diagnosing the teammate's development level for a specific task is critical in setting expectations. And then once we diagnose that development level, then as leaders, we can provide the corresponding leadership style, which is a combination of directive behaviors and supportive behaviors. So the Situational Leadership 2 model helps leaders both to diagnose that teammate development level and then to apply the corresponding leadership. Before we move on, I'll just give you a quick rundown looking at the chart on the right-hand side. You're going to see 4 quadrants. And starting in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see the darker red, and then going up to the orange, across to the yellow, and back down to the green. And then you'll see the curve moving through it, which is a teammate's development journey on a specific task, project, responsibility. And then on that journey are 4 words that represent 4 leadership styles: directing, coaching, supporting, and delegating. So as a leader in setting expectations, it's really important that we don't just approach setting expectations with teammates on a one-size-fits-all approach. We really need to understand where teammates at on a specific task and then provide the correct style of leadership. And so those styles are S1, 2, 3, and 4, directing, coaching, supporting, and delegating. Then on the bottom part of that chart, you'll see D1 through D4, which are the corresponding development levels for a teammate. And on the next slide, we're going to dive into a little bit more of what those are. So as I mentioned earlier, leaders have to first successfully diagnose the teammate's development level in order to apply or use the correct leadership style. And again, I'm just teasing you a little bit, but if you use these 2 diagnosing questions, you can determine what development level a teammate is at on a specific task, role, assignment, and then you'll know what kind of corresponding leadership style you should use. So here are the 2 questions. Number 1, is the teammate's competence high or low? And what we mean by that, are they showing you the ability, the skills to do whatever this task or role is? Are they a new learner, or are they very, very experienced? Are they high, low, maybe somewhere in between? The second question is the teammate's commitment high or low? So imagine if you have somebody who has very high competence, but very low commitment, how you lead and what leadership style you use with that person in setting expectations could be very different. You need to provide a different kind of leadership. And so using those 2 diagnosing questions, you can then determine on the chart at the bottom of this slide what level of development a teammate is at. So if it's starting on the right and then moving left, If a person has low competence and high commitment, we call that person an enthusiastic beginner, or a D1, using the Situational Leadership 2 model. If the teammate has low or to some competence and low commitment, then that's a D2, and we call that person a disillusioned learner. If the teammate has moderate to high competence, but variable commitment, that's a D3. And we call that person a capable but cautious performer. And then finally, on the far left, a person that has both high competence and high commitment, we refer to as a D4, or self-reliant achiever. And remember, a person could be a D4 on one task or responsibility, and they're introduced to something new that they've never done before and asked to perform, and they could be a D1 level for that one. So you may have to provide varying types of leadership styles when you set expectations around specific projects, tasks, roles. But this is how you diagnose where a teammate's development level is. Next slide, please. So giving you just this really quick overview of Situational Leadership 2 model, and trying to give you a very practical tool that you can use in setting expectations. Once you've diagnosed the teammate's development level, then you can match and apply the corresponding leadership style, which uses varying levels of supportive and directive leadership behavior. So let me draw your attention to the chart again on the right. So let's say you have diagnosed a teammate working on a specific task at that D1 level. They have low competence but high commitment. What's the leadership style that you should use? That's directive, where you're being highly directive and lower behavioral or supportive behavior. So you'll see the two axes on that upper chart. One, as you go up, you increase in supportive behavior. The one on the bottom going to the right, you increase in directive behavior. So that enthusiastic beginner, you want to give them lots of direction, not as much support at that point. However, as they move in their journey up to the disillusioned learner, where they have more competence, but maybe less confidence or commitment, then you need to use that coaching style of leadership, where you're being highly directive, but you're also being highly supportive. And then as they move on into the S3, then it's less direction and more support. And then finally, when they achieve that self-reliant achiever in S4, that's when you as a people leader are basically delegating, providing support as needed, but just staying out of the way. So I know that was quick and a lot of information, but I just want to introduce you to a tool that I found very, very effective and helpful to me over the years as I am working and partnering with teammates and setting expectations around their goals, responsibilities, tasks, and projects. So thank you for your time, and I'm going to hand it off to Barb at this time to present some information from a teammate perspective.
All right,
Vicki,
thank you so much.
Do you have my slides, or would you rather you want to pass it to me and I can share?
Either one, I have them, so if you want, do you want me to share them?
That's fine. I'm good either way, whichever way works best for you.
Sounds good. And just a reminder, any questions that you have, if you can send those to Brian Svik, SVIK, in the chat box, we will make sure to get those asked at the end. All right.
We are getting some good ones coming in, so keep them coming.
Good. Good. All right, Barb, I'm going to go ahead and share. Maybe my screen has gone completely left. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. My computer has a mind of its own sometimes.
Those aren't mine. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. There we
You're
go.
good. There we go. And just start on slide 2 for me.
All right. And then I'll have to swap. There we go.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I am going to take, as Kevin said, the other perspective of this. So from the teammate perspective, it's a kind of a strange concept to think about managing the expectations of our manager and what a tricky job that can be. In an ideal world, our managers would know everything about us, our schedule, our vision for our career, our strengths in the workplace, and they would keep all of these things in mind as they were passing out the tasks or allocating work. So it positioned us to really grow and develop. But the reality is, and we all work in these environments, there's tight deadlines, there's a lot of information. Sometimes the communication always doesn't happen that we need, which can lead to unrealistic expectations and disappointment on both the teammate side and the people leader side. So when we think about this, agreeing on shared expectations with your leader and clearly communicating them is really the first step to avoid these kinds of situations. And I'm going to talk through some things to help you do that. So next slide. All right, so to many people, the phrase managing your boss or managing up, we've all heard that, but it may sound unusual or suspicious. And we may think the only reason we would manage up is for personal gain or political reasons, but that's really not what I'm referring to, that political maneuvering or the apple polishing stuff. It's really about managing the relationship that you share with your manager. And we all manage a lot of relationships with a variety of people. It's because we have a lot of people that we interact with, and those relationships need attention to thrive. So the relationship you build with your manager is really key to obtaining the best results for you, your team, your manager, and the agency you work for. So assessing your manager's expectations is really hard to do unless you know them well. And when I mean know them well, I'm talking about, do you know their favorite work style, their pain points, their larger vision for their team or the organization's goals? Can you align yourself to those expectations to really add value? Next slide. So developing those shared expectations is more than just establishing what needs done. It includes establishing how things get done. Sometimes it's those unwritten expectations that can get us. So it's important that when we talk about shared expectations, we're having discussions around what behaviors are expected in the workplace around professionalism, respect, positive attitude, recognition. How do we like to communicate? How does our manager like to communicate? Both like frequency methods, the tone of communication. It's about resources. If we're given a task, establishing the expectations around the resources available to do this. Am I going to be a team of one doing this? Do I need some IT support here? Will I be coordinating or collaborating with another team? All of those things help define your level of autonomy or authority you have and the responsibility and accountability. All right, next slide. So I'm going to tell a little story. It was really early on in my career, and it was like a light bulb went off around goals. I was working at an organization that required you to write your own goals, and then you'd sit down after you drafted those with your manager and have a discussion about them. And like most people, the first time you start doing this, you're like, holy cow, this is a lot of work. It's hard. I don't enjoy it. And then this light bulb went off, and I realized if I'm drafting these goals and I can have a collaborative conversation with my manager around them, there is no reason that I should not get an exceptional rating every single year because it's putting me in the driver's seat in a lot of this. And successful people, I don't care, it's artists, athletes, startup companies, Fortune 500, the most successful people in those, they set goals and then they strive to achieve those. Goals tell us where we're going and how we're going to get there. And it's really kind of a balancing act that we do because on one hand, your workplace wants you to focus on the company's mission, vision, and values and drive the results they're looking for to achieve the business goals that have been set. But on the other hand, we also, from a personal standpoint, want those goals to be challenging for us, give us a chance to grow so we can learn and develop. So when we do this in collaboration with our manager, we can align both those things, the things that the organization needs from us and the things we need back to achieve some personal fulfillment so we can reach our goals, career goals also. So this is a great spot to have that ongoing conversation. These two things are not mutually exclusive. I always believe you can achieve both, your own personal career goals and drive results for your organization. So important part of setting clarification on expectations. All right, I think this is an often overlooked component of clarifying expectations, and it's really about establishing what's important. And that is critical to figure out. A lot of friction can come from when we're out of alignment with what's important in our organization. Some things that can be very important to our manager somehow are not hitting our radar or are below other things for us. And we've got things at a different importance level than they do. And so it's really critical we have conversations around this and discover where we're aligned and where we're out of alignment and understand the why of maybe coming more into alignment with what our manager is expecting of us. When we can help our manager achieve what's important to them, we get better aligned and we definitely have the opportunity to add more value. So let's, next slide. All right. We all know that feedback is helpful. As people, we crave it. We like to hear when we're doing well, when we're not doing well, how we can grow and develop. As managers, we rely on that to improve our performance. So I want to be the best manager I can be for all the teammates who report to me. And for me to do that, I need feedback from them on where I have gaps. It's also a chance for me to recognize the performance of my teammates and give them feedback so they know where they have gaps. As an organization, we depend on that exchange of feedback to grow our teammates and grow our leaders. It improves engagement, it helps us retain talent. And I think when we look at this from the teammate standpoint, it's about setting and having those regular one-on-one meetings with your manager. It really creates the perfect environment to talk about expectations and challenges. The nature of one-on-one is to have free-flowing thought that leads to productive discussion and actionable outcomes. Sometimes managers aren't the best at scheduling those or maintaining them, but you know, as a teammate, you have the latitude to get one-on-ones on their calendar and hold those. Frequency, everybody needs a different frequency with one-on-ones. As Kevin was saying, if you're one of those S4 quadrant green people, you might need one-on-ones biweekly. If you're on the S1 quadrant, you might need them weekly or even more than one time a week to keep everything aligned. So this is really the ideal setting to give and receive feedback with your manager and you, and it's really the quality time with your manager that you need. So next slide, critical thinking. This is one of those things that if you look at the history of workforces and the evolution around that, the term manager, this is fascinating to me. It came into effect during the Industrial Revolution. Before that, we really didn't have a term like that in our vernacular. And there was this belief during that people were basically lazy and would shirk work unless properly supervised and motivated by management. That without direction from management, employees would wander and no meaningful work would get accomplished. But these are really false ideas. And as humans, we are wired to be active and engaged. Our basic nature is to be curious and self-directed.
Oh, Barb, we're not able to hear you. Oh, that is strange.
Can you hear me now, Tracy?
Yes.
All right, my phone, for whatever reason, dropped the call, so I just switched over to my computer. It gets
Okay.
crunchy when I use it, so I hope this comes through okay.
Yes, it does. Good.
Okay, so I'm just going to start back with my thought or concept that humans are wired really to be very active and engaged and curious and self-directed. And we love to think critically and we love to generate ideas to solve problems. And that's how we learn and grow. And our manager's role in that is not necessarily to jump in and play the hero and give us an answer, but it's really that coaching piece and to help us brainstorm ideas and help us figure out those solutions. When we engage in that problem solving and critical thinking and we have those conversations, it really helps clarify our expectations and set a path forward for us to achieve the things that lead to success. All right, next slide. So I just have a couple thoughts here. So clarifying expectations with your managers is really about helping you navigate your career on your terms and achieving goals that you want to achieve in a realistic and timely manner. It reduces the chances of miscommunication, which helps the work environment be healthy and friendly, and it's that relationship piece that you have with your manager. I know these things sound like really simple steps that you can take in your work life. However, they really do impact you and help you manage your manager's expectations, because it's really a sharing of that mutual, here's what I expect, here's what my manager expects, and we're coming to agreement on what that looks like. So I think it's always important for us to remember that our careers are our responsibility, and setting the right expectations is a stepping stone to help us tailor what we want for our career and a vision of where we'd like to take it. And it is really important that these things be a balance between you and your manager and really discussed and we get to that mutual understanding. So that is what I want to leave you with, and we can take questions.
I could unmute you. If you could put those questions in the chat box, that would be great. Looks like we've got lots of stuff coming in. Good stuff. All right. Thank you, Barb. Denise, I am glad you were able to join us. So I am going to turn it on over to you, and I have your PowerPoint as well.
Okay.
So let me go ahead and share that. If you're ready, if you wanted to do a quick introduction while I'm turning this on, that would be great.
I sure would. I was going to say, I apologize. Computer technology kind of eluded me this afternoon, but they were able to get me engaged or get on the call. My name is Denise Ewing. I'm a human resources business partner for the Department of Health and Human Services and have been in this role now for almost 8 years. And I'm excited about being able to talk to everyone about the setting expectations. I missed my co-panelist presentation, so I apologize in advance if I, repeat some of the information that they gave you. But they were talking about setting expectations, and my piece that I wanted to talk about was with setting expectations, the importance of the follow-up. So moving on to my next slide, and I put all of my little bullet points there on the one slide for us. The important thing was setting the expectations, and I know they gave you a lot of great information in regards to how to set those expectations. We're right now in the process of completing our performance evaluation, so I know there's been a lot of discussion around setting expectations with your staff, making sure that they understand what you expect of them for the upcoming year. One of the most important things once you've set those expectations is just making sure that we are following up with those expectations. What's next after we've got them set is making sure that we're holding those regularly scheduled meetings with either the supervisor or if you're a teammate with your supervisor. One of the biggest things that you have come across, and I know that Barb indicated in hers, is that these regularly scheduled meetings are on both of the individuals involved in your expectations, both the supervisors and the teammates. We all get busy, whether we're supervisors or whether we're teammates, and having that joint effort of trying to find that time that's going to work for both of you is important. These meetings that you have in regards to these expectations really want to be conversations between you and your supervisor or you and your teammate in regards to making sure that there are clear expectations and that we're both on the same page in regards to what those expectations are. There's nothing more frustrating than thinking that I am meeting and I'm doing everything that my supervisor expects of me, than to come into a meeting and find out, oh, I've been on the wrong page this entire time. And talking it over with them and making sure that those expectations and that what you are doing is in line with what your supervisor expectations are or what the division agency expectations are. Again, it's not the sole responsibility of the supervisor to make those regularly scheduled meetings. So very important to make sure that, you know, if something has to be rescheduled, that we follow up with that. Follow up is all I can say with those. It's just so important to make sure that as you go through, because sometimes we have to change what our expectations are. Maybe we've set a goal, and when we are meeting on those regularly scheduled meetings, we are reviewing and restating those expectations, and maybe something's had to change. So again, those follow-up meetings are just that opportunity to sit back and say, this is where we were. Maybe we need to make a change. Maybe there's something that either the teammate or the supervisor has found that now that we're into these meetings and we're having these discussions on these expectations, that maybe something would work better. Maybe something needs to change. Maybe there are different expectations that have been given down to us from our management team that we need to discuss. Some of those questions, again, and the importance of just that communication between the two of you in regards to making sure, again, that you have the clear expectations. And you hear in many different avenues, the understanding the why behind those expectations. Why do we have these expectations? Why are those expectations important to me as a teammate? Why are they important to me and our team, the team I'm on? What differences those make, and as the agency as a whole. We've had many years now where we have tried to align our goals with what the governor's goals are and making sure that we're continuing with those expectations, keeping them up there. In those conversations that we have with each other, again, having that conversation of what's working well. You know, what is it that you have seen that this aspect is working really well, or this aspect is not working as well as we had planned? And are there any other ideas that you as a teammate or I as a supervisor can help? You know, sometimes, and I believe I heard Barb talking about the differences between people. You know, what works for me does not always necessarily work for the next person. So reviewing and restating those expectations gives you that opportunity and gives you that knowledge with your teammate or your supervisor in regards to what's going to work best for me. Is it going to be best for me to have those detailed step-by-step processes? Or am I someone who is going to be better served by just giving me the goal and letting me move towards achieving that goal on a grander scale and with not as much detailed direction? But again, it's how are you feeling about the goal? How are you feeling about your progression? Really, at least once a month, having these follow-up meetings in regards to the expectations, bringing up those performance evaluations as you're meeting every month, and documenting how you're advancing or how you're moving towards that goal. Discussing any opportunities for change or improvement of the expectations, and if need be, breaking down things if needed. If it's easier to stay on task by making sure we're stepping or hitting each one of those rungs of the ladder, sometimes those rungs being closer together are what helps us achieve our goal and helps us achieve our goal and expectations in a timely manner. So making sure, again, that you're getting to know that employee, you're getting to know the expectations of that supervisor. A lot of times you hear individuals talking about their leadership style and how this works, and giving that information to your staff with setting those expectations gives your teammate an opportunity for success in meeting the goals in the manner that you want them to meet them also. What do you need as you go along? Your needs as a teammate or needs as a supervisor may change in regards to what we need to achieve those expectations and those goals as we go throughout the year. And I keep referring to the year as we're in the middle of the performance management process and the performance evaluations to make sure that as we go along, again, setting those expectations and making sure we're having those communication allows that teammate and allows that supervisor to feel better about where we're at in regards to have I met the expectations so that when we come down to performance evaluation time on a yearly basis, we don't have someone coming into the meeting for those factors not feeling like they're confident in regards to whether or not they've succeeded in meeting those expectations as a supervisor or as a teammate. Too many times we hear of where we get busy and we're not able to touch base back with our employees or as your teammates, you know, coming into those meetings again, knowing that I've been meeting with my supervisor and I know I'm right on track for where we need to be. And I feel good about meeting and completing these performance evaluations on a yearly basis. Having the discussion of what has been a success as we go throughout the time frame. From the last month when you have your meetings, what succeeded? What have you been engaged in, and what have you been excited about achieving throughout this time frame? And documenting your progress towards these expectations, again, really want to stress with this one that it's not just the supervisor that needs to document what type of advancements we've made or where we're at towards those goals. Keeping that information for myself as a teammate would be very important, and again, make me feel a lot better before I come into that meeting with my supervisor, that I know that I'm meeting the expectations that I need to be meeting and that I'm meeting them in a timely manner. And I know I've heard, as Barb was talking before, the importance of giving that continuous feedback. Celebrate those successes that you have, celebrate those milestones in that goal or in that expectation that you've achieved, and discuss any struggles that you've had. Just the communication and that continual communication is so important in making sure that once we have set those expectations, that we're ensuring both success for our teammate and for our team as a supervisor managing them. Okay.
All right. Great, good stuff. Thank you, Denise. Okay, lots of really good information there, and I know we have questions coming in. I guess my takeaway from what the three of you have shared is know the people you supervise, know your supervisor, so have that relationship and communicate, right? It's a two-way street, so making sure we're communicating with each other consistently. Really good stuff. Barb or Kevin, did you have anything that you wanted to add at this point before we go to Q&A?
No, I was just appreciating Denise's last slide. Those ladders reminded me this weekend I was taking Christmas lights off our roof and I fell off a 20-foot ladder. Fortunately, I was on the first rung. So sorry, butt of down. But no, great stuff. And I look forward to any questions that we have here.
I'm
All right.
taking questions, Tracy.
Okay, sounds good. All right, Brian, I will turn it over to you then.
All right, sounds good. Great information. We did have quite a few questions about the PowerPoints and if the PowerPoints can be shared. Kevin had said that with the SL2, some of those charts, we'll probably have to remove that, but we'll be able to share those out. But we'll put some links in there, and so we can put those in the Employee Development Center. So you'll be able to access those. We did have quite a few questions about the situational leadership model, so I'll just kind of work through those. So I guess, Kevin, these will be for you. The first one is just asking, the situational leadership model, is there a testing that can be paid for team building? Is this something that can be accessed by teams, and is there a cost to that?
There is a cost to it. In my previous experience in the private sector, I was and am certified as a facilitator for that. The company I was with used it exclusively enterprise-wide, but there's a significant cost associated with it. However, a lot of the principles and everything that you would get in setting in, it's a full day class, you can Google. And when I submit the PowerPoint, as you said, Brian, I'll maybe include some links in there that will be helpful to people. But that's not something currently that the state has licensed or anything like that.
Okay. And there was a question on there about asking the difference between directive and supportive behavior. And Kevin, I saw you did answer that in the chat there, so we can include that in our document, our Q&A document as well. Another question on that: why is D2 delusioned? Do they appear more competent than previously thought?
No. Well, I'm sorry if I misspoke. It's disillusioned. So what we mean by that is, hey, when I started this as an enthusiastic beginner, I thought maybe it was going to be a little bit more easy than it was. Now that I'm into it, maybe I'm getting a little disillusioned about my competency or my ability to do this. And so that's where the more supportive behavior comes in, where as a leader, I'm using that style and saying, hey, you can do this. I'm here to help you. I'm here to support you. Always feel free to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Because sometimes as leaders, our teammates can think, we give them a task and they think that asking for help or clarification is seen as a weakness. And so that kind of supportive leadership behavior helps that person over the hump and moves them on in their development journey around that specific task or project.
All right, very good. Let's see here. One question on here, they're asking for any advice or suggestions on how does one, as a subordinate or a frontline teammate, suggest the administrator take the SL2 approach. So I guess leadership nudge, as you'd say, Kevin, how would they go about that? How would you recommend that?
Well, I think it goes a lot to Barb here, and I'll let her kind of fill in from a teammate perspective on managing up. And I think it takes a little bit of courage, but just setting expectations with your leader and letting them know what you need. And maybe some open-ended questions or things like that. But sometimes just broaching that conversation is difficult, but really important. And I'll defer to Barb because this was kind of right in the wheelhouse of where she was at.
No, I think your response is right on. And I think sometimes it feels like it takes a lot of courage for the teammate to open that conversation up. But most of our managers would welcome it because we want to be great managers for our teammates. And sometimes we just don't know where that teammate's at or what style would work best with them. So I think that managers would be receptive to having that conversation and saying, I just want to share how I work best, the ways I enjoy interacting, how much feedback I like, how I'd like to seek feedback. I think that's all fair, and managers would definitely welcome that conversation, but it might feel a little risky when we start doing that.
And I might add on to, what was just said. You could, Google the chart that I used in my presentation and say, hey, I was on some training and this was shared. Can I talk to you about this? And it's a great segue just to talk about leadership. It's not loaded around any specific thing, and it might open the conversation up and allow for some good dialogue.
Very good. Here's a question, and the person asking said maybe it doesn't quite fit with today's topic, but I think it's a good question, and it's a little bit of a reversal here. But what advice do you have if someone's supervisor isn't meeting their expectations, and then that affects the ability for that individual to do their job well?
So I think that's where we need to sit down. Hopefully you're having one-on-ones with your manager. If you're not, schedule one. Schedule a meeting with your manager and say, I want to talk to you. And if it's around a specific project or process or body of work, it's easier to open the door on that conversation, because we can start with the facts about what's not working on that project or the barriers we're encountering. And we can open the door with those things that can lead into, gee, this was great conversation. I appreciated your time. Can we do this more often? Can I have more of your time? It will help me drive better outcomes that then fulfills the manager. If that's a project for you or the body of work you need to do, I guarantee it's something that the managers, the team is invested in too. So I think it's the approach you take with that. And it's always easier if you have a specific project that you can start with. Here's the facts about what is or is not working on this project, and I need your advice and guidance.
All right, awesome, great advice there. This question came in, and I'm not sure. I'll just read it. It says, "What % of supervisors create the goals for their employees, and what % of supervisors have their employees create their goals themselves?" So I'm not sure if they're asking just in general, statistically across the state, what that percentage is, or if they're asking more, what should the balance be between? So maybe we go with that. What should the balance be between supervisors creating the goals for their employees versus supervisors having their employees create their goals themselves?
I'm going to go back to what Kevin was using. So I think that question depends on where that employee is in that learning curve, right? So if I have just joined and you say to me, hey, new employee, write your own goals, I'm going to be like, yeah, that's not helpful. I have no idea what I'm even, like what this job entails yet. So, but if I've been here for 5 years and my manager's saying, hey, Barb, you really should be looking at this and coming to me with how we drive this capability forward. You've been doing it a long time. You're closer to the daily work. I'm looking for that feedback. So I think there's a lot of factors in that. I'm not sure you can say that it should always be the employee writing those, but what it should always be, or the manager writing this, it should always be collaborative. And as managers are assessing if this person should write their own goals or if I should take a bigger hand in that, I think you have to look at where they're at as far as newness to the job, the learning curve, all of those factors to help guide that. So I'm not a big fan of it's always this or it's always that. It just, to me, it's always about it depends. Kevin, you might have more thoughts on that.
No, I would just totally agree with what you said, Barb. It should always be collaborative. When you're setting goals, if teammates and people leaders are not bought into it together, the chances of it being successful are really, really low. And so, and I agree. And if it's a new employee, that's, you got to be more directive and informative. And if it's somebody that's been around a long time and maybe longer than me, then they may have a lot bigger part in doing that. But Denise, this is kind of where you were talking as well. Anything you would add?
I would just add, as Tracy had indicated, a big part of this and a big part of that buy-in with your staff on those goals is just that communication and the collaboration in regards to, sometimes we don't always get to set the goals. Sometimes they're more directed, from upper management, but having that conversation about those specific goals and how they really relate to that individual is where that individual then really engages in achieving that goal and making that goal a success. Because when they feel like they have that collaborative part in there, they're more engaged with us and achieving our goals.
Yeah, I love that. That's great insight and advice there. There's a couple questions here. I'm gonna put them together because I think they go together. But one question is, what if expectations seem to change often? How should I handle that as a teammate? And then are some expectations fluid or flexible? And if so, how do you ensure they do not become ambiguous?
I would say, for DHHS, change is the normal word for us. You always have things that are going to change. And I think having that continuous conversation keeps them more direct and more specific and doesn't allow them to get to that ambiguous point because you're having those ongoing conversations. And those goals do at times change and, change in any way that we can to, make them more achievable and make them more successful for the whole.
I agree with Denise there. You start thinking of the elements of a SMART goal here, and expectations or goals need to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. And sometimes, you don't want it to be ambiguous around because we have certain deliverables that there are deadlines and that has to happen. So communicating early and often on those expectations and parameters of a project or task, having those regular conversations and feedback, as both Denise and Barb have pointed out, are critical. And then there are times where we adjust. I think of an example, Brian, even you and I last year with some of the training team's goals because of the pandemic, those had to be carried over into 2021. And so we kind of had to adjust on the fly and recognize that those no longer were attainable due to some outside circumstances. So having that flexibility is always really important in my estimation.
I think the one piece to address around the ambiguity too is there is a certain amount of ambiguity that the pandemic was a perfect example of that, where we just have to get comfortable working in the ambiguity and making decisions with what we do know and moving forward, because we're never always going to have this crystal clear picture of the direction, and then just being willing to say, we're going to go this way and we'll adjust as we need to. We saw a lot of that in 2020. And it really stretched us to say, I don't have any clearer picture. We're going to live with our ambiguity and move forward anyway. So some of that is just a comfort level we have to get to around it.
All right. We have a question came in. What's the best task management tips to keep a team on track?
Well, I'm just going back to SMART goals, really, and I'm not sure, if there was something more that to this question that we were digging for, but keeping people on track is that constant communication, clear communication, getting feedback, getting input, regular check-ins. And then as much as possible, having all those elements of a SMART goal. So I don't know that I have any tips beyond that. And Barb, Denise, maybe you guys have something.
You know what? I go back to the LSS training on this, and I love, the LSS people are going to cringe because I can't remember what the boards are called. But I used to do 3-week sprints and everything was on a wall. And so to me, there's tools out there around project management and keeping people on task. LSS has some great ones. Qdip boards, is that right? Did I get the term? Okay, popped in my head. I think that there's a lot of great tools in that framework that we can use and adopt in our teams to keep people on task, create the clarity of expectations, set those goals about when things need done, and then have a visual view of where we're at, which we can create online or hard copy. So I would recommend to tap your LSS person for your agency and work with them. They will have a lot of great tools for you.
Yeah, that's a great point, Barb. And there's been some comments that have come in as well that process improvement can help with that, and the Qdip boards, swim lane boards were always helpful on our team because we had a lot of projects, very project oriented, and just having that daily huddle, talking about where we are on things has always really helped. All right. Tracy, do we have time for a few more questions?
Maybe one.
Okay. And just so everyone knows, we save these questions out. So if there's any that we don't get to, we will put a document together with it. So the questions will be answered. But scrolling up here, and this was more of maybe just a comment, but the collaborative goal process is highly dependent upon employees. Some embrace it, others have had them given out for years and are okay with it. So it's not really a question, just more of a comment there, but I think we touched on that quite a bit. Let's see here. And some of these have been, I'm trying to filter out the ones where we've already kind of addressed it. You know, I think we pretty much have answered them. Well, here's one more. Okay, why is situational leadership used in more situations, maybe it's used in more situations than transformational leadership when it comes to performance evaluation and engagement? So I can reread that if you want me to. It says, why is situational leadership used in more situations than transformational leadership when it comes to performance evaluation and engagement?
I'm going to be really honest on this. I'm not sure that I have the contextual understanding of this question to be able to answer it.
And that's
right.
fair. So the person who asked that question, if you want to, you can just email me if you want. It's just Brian.Civic at Nebraska, Brian.Civic@nebraska.gov. And then if you want clarification on that, and then I can get that to Kevin and we can get an answer for you on that.
Great. Okay, we are at 2:00. Thank you to all of our panelists for joining today and sharing your expertise. Thank you to all of our attendees for joining us this last hour. We will get those questions in this recording on the EDC. Take something right now and put it in your back pocket of what you're going to start implementing after listening this last hour to this information. I started at the beginning, and so I'm going to end the same way. When you set expectations, it really transforms into accountability. And when you have accountability, you have trust. And that's a really good circle to be in. So talk with each other, communicate with each other, and know what each other expects. Just have those conversations. Thank you so much again for joining us today. Thank you to our panelists, and have a great one.